The checkpoint didn't look like a prison. That was the first thing Rowan noticed. No bars, no holding cells, just clean lines carved into the basalt wall, light panels set flush with the stone, and a long corridor that smelled faintly of ozone and recycled air. Everything was orderly enough to feel intentional, designed to calm people who didn't realize they needed calming. Rowan Hale stepped through without breaking stride. He wore a dock marshal's coat, weathered but well kept, the kind issued to people who worked long enough to stop noticing the cold. The coat was open, revealing a dark underlayer with no markings. His boots were scuffed, not sloppy, earned. A thin authorization ring rested at his knuckle, dull metal, functional. He didn't touch it, his eyes did the work. Exit placement, reflection angles, personnel density. He tracked it all automatically, not with tension but familiarity, like breathing. The kind of awareness you earned by surviving mistakes long enough to stop making them. The corridor opened into a holding concourse. That was where he slowed, not because he meant to, but because something in the space disrupted the rhythm. The light here was brighter, too bright, panels angled downward to erase shadow. The floor sloped subtly toward a drainage seam that ran the length of the chamber, clean, maintained, designed for fluids. Rowan stopped fully when he saw them. 4 figures stood barefoot on the stone. Not restrained, not touching each other, spaced evenly beneath a structural arch like items placed for inspection. Their skin held a muted gray-violet tone, patterned faintly along the shoulders and spine, subspecies markers he recognized but hadn't seen up close in years. They weren't looking at the guards, they were looking straight ahead. The youngest, Rowan guessed barely past maturity, stood rigid, fists clenched at her sides, breath shallow and fast. The second leaned slightly on one hip, conserving energy. Her gaze flicked once, sharp, cataloging. The third stared at nothing, eyes unfocused, dissociating. The fourth met Rowan's eyes immediately. No fear, no appeal, assessment. Rowan felt the shift hit him low in the chest, not panic, recognition. A compliance officer stood nearby, posture relaxed, tablet tucked under one arm. "Transit seizure," he said conversationally. "Documentation pending, you're early." Rowan didn't answer. He stepped closer, boots quiet on stone. The guards didn't move, they recognized the coat, the ring. Rowan stopped in front of the fourth detainee. Up close he could see the bruising beneath the skin, subtle but deliberate, grip marks, control, not chaos. And then he saw the scar, high on her clavicle. A thin, pale line intersecting a faded geometric mark burned into the skin beneath it. Old, healed wrong, interrupted by damage. Rowan swallowed. He remembered vacuum alarms screaming through a cracked hull, pressure loss, cold so sharp it stole thought. He remembered hands anchoring him when his tether failed, a voice in his ear, steady, furious, refusing to let him drift. That mark had been against his shoulder when he thought he was gone. He straightened. "This transfer stops," Rowan said. The officer blinked once. "Marshal, stops," Rowan repeated, quiet, absolute. He raised his ring and turned it just enough for the authorization glyph to flare dull white. No dramatics, just fact. "Extended holding without declared charges violates cross-sector transit law," Rowan said. "Release condition applies." The officer hesitated. His eyes flicked toward the ceiling, toward the cameras. "That's discretionary." "Not once logged." Silence stretched. People nearby pretended not to hear. The officer exhaled, then nodded. "Fine, release them." The guards stepped back. The fourth detainee didn't move. Rowan turned to her. "You're free to walk." She studied him for a long second, then she stepped forward. Her knees wobbled once before locking. The others followed more slowly, bodies stiff with returning circulation. Rowan shifted automatically, placing himself between them and the guards, not aggressive, just present. "What's your name?" she asked him, voice rough but controlled. "Rowan," she nodded once. "You recognize the mark?" "Yes." "Then don't leave us here." Rowan didn't answer immediately. He looked at the space, the lighting, the drains, the ease with which people had looked away. "I won't," he said finally. They exited through a service passage that smelled like warm metal and coolant. The air felt heavier there, honest. The youngest stumbled once. Rowan caught her elbow without comment. She nodded, jaw clenched. They boarded a short-range lift pod, unmarked and silent. Inside, the light was low, functional, safe. Only once the doors sealed did anyone breathe fully. The fourth leaned back against the wall, eyes never leaving Rowan. You're still in the system, she said. Yes. And this will cost you. Yes. A pause. Why? Rowan looked at the faded mark on her skin. Because some things aren't supposed to be repurposed, he said, and because I don't abandon people who keep me alive. The pod began to move. Outside, the station fell away, giving way to open dark and the slow rotation of habitat lights beyond. For the first time since the corridor, the youngest laughed softly, not from humor, from disbelief. Rowan stayed where he was, steady, already mapping what came next, not rescue, accountability. And this time he wouldn't be alone. The pod did not travel directly to a medical hub. That was intentional. Rowan set the route manually, threading through maintenance spurs and auxiliary docks that didn't advertise their purpose. The path added 12 minutes. 12 minutes without questions. Without systems auto-flagging irregular passenger profiles. The youngest sat curled on the bench, knees pulled close, fingers worrying the seam of her sleeve. Her breathing had slowed but not steadied. Every jolt of the track made her shoulders tight. The second, compact, sharp-eyed, sat upright with her boots planted, hands folded loosely between her knees. Stillness as discipline. She watched reflections in the pod's interior paneling, tracking movement behind them without turning her head. The third leaned back with her eyes closed, lips parted slightly. Shock managed, not gone. The fourth, scarred, marked, steady, remained standing until the pod began its descent. Only then did she sit opposite Rowan, elbows braced on her thighs. You rooted us wide, she said. Yes, to avoid logs. Yes, she studied him. You do this often. I do it when necessary. A faint curl touched the corner of her mouth. Not a smile, recognition. My name is Allura, she said. That matters if we're moving forward. Rowan inclined his head. It does, she waited. Kai, the youngest said suddenly, glancing up as if surprised by her own voice. I'm Kai. The compact one followed without hesitation. Sivan, the third, opened her eyes. Leth. Names settled into the space like anchors. The pod slowed as it approached a cliff-integrated clinic annex, small, neutral, designed for occupational injuries and insurance disputes. Not a shelter, not custody. Rowan stood first. Before we exit, circulation checks. Nausea, dizziness. If you lie, it gets worse later. Kai nodded immediately. Sivan hesitated, then nodded once. Leth lifted one shoulder in agreement. Allura held Rowan's gaze. Do it. Inside, the clinic smelled like antiseptic and warm metal. A medic looked up, eyes flicking to Rowan's coat, then to the bare feet, the bruising, the marks left by restraint. Inversion, the medic asked. Yes, the medic's mouth tightened. I'll need them in bays. Rowan stayed close but not hovering. He turned his back when clothing was adjusted. He listened to breathing patterns, to the small involuntary sounds bodies made when blood returned too quickly. Kai gagged once. Rowan was there with a basin before she finished the motion. Sorry, she whispered. You don't apologize for physiology, Rowan replied. Sivan watched that exchange carefully. When the medic pressed along Allura's ribs, Allura hissed once, then stilled. Control layered over pain. That marking, the medic said, glancing at the faded symbol. Old. Yes, Allura replied, and not yours to catalog. The medic nodded and moved on. Clearance came quietly. Temporary treatment. No full identifiers. Rowan signed under a standard transit intervention clause, enough to justify care, not enough to leave a trail. They exited through a side promenade where the light had softened into late cycle gold. The smell of hot oil and salt carried from nearby vendors. Rowan's stomach growled audibly. Kai froze, embarrassed. Rowan didn't comment. He walked to the nearest stand and ordered without looking back. 4 wraps, extra protein, extra salt. He handed them out like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. Kai took hers with both hands and bit in immediately. Her eyes closed for half a second before she could stop herself. A sound escaped her, small, involuntary. Sivan ate more slowly, watching Rowan over the rim of the flatbread. You're not done, she said. No, Rowan replied. This is the pause between pressures. Allura held her food for a moment before eating. Why us? Rowan chewed, swallowed. Because someone used a rescue mark as inventory branding. Her jaw tightened. And because, Rowan continued, I was there when it meant survival. That answer settled something. They moved again as evening deepened, toward a residential access lift built directly into the basalt. Rowan keyed it manually instead of using his ring. Inside, the air smelled warmer, lived in. "Where are you taking us?" Kai asked quietly. "Temporary housing," Rowan said. "Mine." Kai's eyes widened. "Is that allowed?" "It's rented," Rowan replied. "Guests are permitted." Allura watched his face for hesitation. There was none. The apartment was plain, functional, clean. Salt lamp lighting softened the stone walls. A narrow couch. A compact kitchen stocked with sealed containers. A balcony door opened to the sound of the ocean engines below. Kai stepped inside and stopped, very still. "It's quiet," she said. "Yes." Sivan checked the locks without being asked. She relaxed only slightly when she finished. Allura closed the door behind her and leaned back against it, eyes closed for one controlled breath. "You're safe here," Rowan said. "No cameras, no reporting requirements." "How long?" Allura asked. "Tonight. Tomorrow we decide together." That phrasing mattered. She noted it. Rowan removed his coat and hung it neatly. The deliberate normalcy signaled more than reassurance ever could. Later, when exhaustion finally pulled Kai towards sleep and Sivan claimed a chair with watchful posture, Rowan stood on the balcony alone. The city pulsed below, indifferent and vast. Allura joined him without announcement. "You didn't posture back there," she said. "No threats, no force." "Force draws attention," Rowan replied, "and attention is dangerous." "Yes." She leaned her forearms on the railing beside him, close enough that their sleeves brushed. "You didn't save us," she said. "You intervened." Rowan nodded. "Rescue implies ownership. I don't claim that." Her breathing slowed. "That matters," she said quietly. Inside, the apartment settled. Footsteps faded, fabric rustled, doors closed softly. Rowan remained steady at the railing, already mapping the chain he would follow next, already aware of the cost. Behind him, 4 people slept without restraints. For now, that was enough to justify everything that would come next. Morning arrived without announcement. Light slid in through the open balcony door in a narrow band, pale and cool, catching dust motes in the air before reaching the edge of the table. The ocean engines below maintained their steady pulse, low enough to be felt more than heard. The city did not care that anything had changed. Rowan was already awake. He stood at the counter with his sleeves rolled to his forearms, heating protein strips in a shallow pan. The smell was simple and grounding, salt, rendered fat heat. He moved quietly, deliberately, as if noise itself were something to ration. He kept his back partly to the hallway, but his attention never left it. He expected footsteps. What he didn't expect was how soft they were. Allura stopped just inside the kitchen threshold. She had changed into borrowed clothes, dark trousers, a fitted shirt that didn't hide the bruising along her ribs but didn't expose it either. Her hair was loose now, heavy over one shoulder. She watched him without speaking. "You didn't sleep," she said. "Enough," Rowan replied, turning the heat down. She leaned against the counter opposite him. "That's not an answer." He met her gaze briefly. "It's an accurate one." That earned a quiet exhale from her, not disapproval, understanding. Kai appeared next, barefoot, hoodie swallowed by her frame. She stopped when the smell hit her and looked between them, unsure whether to interrupt. "It's for everyone," Rowan said without turning. Her shoulders dropped immediately. "Okay." Sivan came out last, already dressed, posture alert. She took in the room in one sweep: food, exits, body language, then sat where she could see both the hall and the balcony. They ate without ceremony. No one rushed. No one guarded their plate. Kai ate until she slowed on her own, then stopped, hands resting on the table like she had learned she was allowed to. Leth joined them partway through, quieter than the others but more present than the night before. When the plates were half empty, Sivan spoke. "You're still working," she said to Rowan, "aren't you?" "Yes." "And last night wasn't a deviation." "No." Allura didn't look at him. "It was the root." Rowan nodded once. Silence settled again, heavier now but not hostile, the kind of quiet where decisions form. "We can't disappear," Kai said suddenly. "If we do, they'll say we were moved or sold." "They already think that," Sivan replied. "Disappearing confirms it." Rowan set his fork down. "Then we don't disappear." All eyes turned to him. "We stay visible," he continued. "Public spaces, documented movement, no confrontations yet." Allura's jaw tightened. "You're letting them watch." "Yes," Rowan said. "Watching slows people down. Acting fast creates mistakes. And when they try to isolate one of us," Leth asked quietly. Rowan didn't hesitate. "They won't succeed." The certainty in his voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. They went out late morning. The promenade was busier than the night before. Workers, vendors, transit traffic. The air carried spice and engine heat. Glances landed on them and slid away. Some lingered too long. Rowan walked between Allura and the outer rail. Sivan took the inner side. Kai stayed close, matching their pace without being told. At a narrow clothing stall tucked between maintenance arches, Rowan ordered without negotiation. Durable fabrics, neutral colors, nothing that drew attention. He watched reflections in the stall's metal frame as items changed hands. Two figures across the walkway lingered longer than necessary. Allura noticed. "They're back." "Yes," Rowan said. Kai's breath hitched. "Are they?" "Not yet," Rowan said. "And not here." They moved on. At a small cafe built into the stone, Rowan chose a table near the center. Visibility without exposure. When a nearby patron muttered something under his breath, Allura stiffened instinctively. Rowan shifted closer, his knee brushing hers under the table. The contact was brief, intentional, a reminder of position. She exhaled slowly and stayed where she was. "You don't correct them," she said quietly. "No," Rowan replied. "Correction escalates, presence discourages." She studied him, then nodded. By mid-cycle, they reached a municipal access block, administrative, gray, narrow windows. People came here to fix problems that were supposed to stay small. Inside, Rowan paused near a public display, eyes on the reflection rather than the information. The same two figures stood across the hall, pretending to argue. "They're waiting," Sivan said. "Yes." "Why not confront them here?" Kai whispered. "Because," Rowan said, "they want an excuse." They moved deeper into the block to a small registry desk set back from the main flow. One clerk bored, scrolling. Rowan placed his slate down gently. "Temporary civilian coverage," he said. "3 adults, non-resident, no relocation flag." The clerk glanced at Rowan's ring, hesitated. "That's discretionary." Rowan slid a document code across the screen. "It's within my authority." The clerk tapped, sighed, then nodded. "Names." Sivan spoke first. Clear, calm. Kai followed, voice steadier than before. Leth murmured hers. Allura stepped forward last. "Allura." No surname, no hesitation. The terminal chimed softly. 72 hours, the clerk said. "That's enough," Rowan replied. They left without looking back. Outside, the wind off the ocean had picked up, cooler now. Allura rolled her shoulders, testing the air like someone reacquainting herself with weather. Rowan stopped at the overlook where the cliff dropped away sharply. The ocean churned below, dark and immense. "I need to be clear," he said. They waited. "I am still inside my assignment," Rowan continued. "People may push limits. They may try to provoke mistakes." "And if they do?" Allura asked. Rowan turned to face her fully. "Then I step in front and I don't step away." She searched his face for doubt. There was none. That night back at the apartment, Rowan opened his slate and finished the report. He attached images, route logs, authorization seals. He did not soften the language. When the confirmation pulse returned, he set the slate aside and didn't look at it again. Later, as the city settled into its night rhythm, Rowan stood on the balcony with Allura beside him. She leaned into his side easily now, like the space had always been meant for her. "You didn't promise safety," she said. "You promised consistency." "Yes. That's better." Below them, systems shifted quietly. Messages moved. Alerts propagated. Inside the apartment, Kai and Sivan talked in low voices that sounded almost like laughter. Rowan rested his forearms on the railing, feeling the weight of what he had set in motion. For the first time in a long while, it felt like work worth finishing. The first response didn't arrive loudly. That would have been easier. Rowan felt it instead, the way you felt pressure change before a storm, subtle shifts in access latency, a half-second delay where there shouldn't have been one. His slate took longer to authenticate the next morning. Not enough to trigger alerts. Enough to be noticed by someone who lived inside margins. He didn't mention it. He stood at the counter again, preparing food with the same deliberate calm as if the system hadn't just blinked at him. Allura watched from the doorway. "You felt it," she said. "Yes." "You didn't tell them." "No." She stepped closer. "Why?" "Because once it's named, it becomes a threat," Rowan replied. "Right now it's just pressure." She accepted that, but her shoulders stayed tight. They went out again after midday. Visibility mattered more now. The promenade was louder, denser. A public rally had formed 2 tiers down, something about dock quotas and transit fees. Crowds made cover, crowds also made chaos. Rowan adjusted their route without explaining it. Sivan noticed anyway. "You're narrowing lanes," she said quietly. "Yes, to control exits." "Yes," Kai swallowed. "Is today the day?" "Not unless they choose it," Rowan replied. "They didn't. Not directly. Instead, it came as a message." Rowan's slate pulsed once while they were standing near a public water station. He glanced down. A priority marker he hadn't seen in years. Internal review notice, preliminary, no accusation. No charge, just attention. Rowan locked the slate and slipped it back into his coat. Allura was watching his face. "That's not nothing." "No," Rowan said. "It's a door being opened." "By who?" "Someone who wants to see if I'll walk through alone." They didn't return to the apartment immediately. Rowan took them instead to a transit overlook. A wide platform open to the sky, turbines visible in the distance. Public, documented, impossible to seal quietly. They stood together near the rail. "This is where it gets harder," Rowan said. "They'll try to separate narratives, make me look like an outlier, make you look like variables." "And if we stay together," Kai asked. "Then they have to escalate," Sivan frowned. "Which gives you leverage." "Yes." Allura turned to him. "You're planning to force their hand." "I'm planning to make them show it." That night the knock came. Not a bang, not a threat. 3 measured taps. Rowan was already on his feet. He moved without rushing, checking the door panel manually instead of through the system. 2 figures stood in the hall, plain clothes, neutral posture, authority worn lightly on purpose. "Marshal Hale," the taller one said. "We need to ask you a few questions." Rowan opened the door fully and stepped into the hall, closing it behind him. "You can ask," he said. "You can't enter." The shorter one smiled. "We're not here about your guests." "That's good," Rowan replied, "because they're not subject to your jurisdiction." A pause. "We're here about your report," the taller one said. "It's unusually thorough. I take my work seriously." "So we've noticed," the other replied. "There are concerns about conflict of interest." Rowan didn't react. "Define conflict," he said. "You intervened directly." "Yes. Outside standard escalation." Rowan replied. "Inside documented authority." They exchanged a look. "You're making this difficult," the taller one said. "No," Rowan corrected. "I'm making it visible." Silence stretched. From behind the door, a soft sound movement. Allura listening, the taller one exhaled. "This doesn't end with us." "I know," Rowan said. They left without another word. Rowan stayed in the hall for a long moment after they were gone. Then he turned and went back inside. Allura was standing just beyond the door. "They tried to make you step aside," she said. "Yes." "And you didn't." "No." She searched his face, then nodded. "Good." Later, when the apartment had settled and the city lights pulsed low and steady beyond the balcony, Allura joined Rowan at the table where his slate lay open. "You're choosing exposure," she said, "not protection." "I'm choosing accountability," Rowan replied. "Protection without it never lasts." She leaned closer, close enough that he could feel her warmth, her steadiness. "You know what they'll do next?" "Yes. They'll try to make you choose between us and the work." Rowan met her gaze. "They already failed." Something shifted then, not dramatic, not loud, just alignment. She reached for his hand, not testing, not asking, holding. "Then we stay," she said, "all of us." "Yes," Rowan replied. Outside, the turbines continued their endless rotation. Inside, 4 people sat around a table, fully aware that the system had noticed them and would not look away again. And this time neither would they. The hearing was scheduled at first light, not publicized, not hidden, filed under a neutral designation that suggested routine oversight and promised anything but. Rowan read the notice once, acknowledged it, and set his slate down. Allura watched him from the balcony door. "This is the part where people disappear," she said. "Yes," Rowan replied, "or they're made small." She waited. "And this is the part," he continued, "where that stops working." They arrived together. Escorted, not separated. The chamber was carved into the cliff like everything else that mattered, stone and glass, light angled to eliminate shadow. A semicircle of officials waited behind a low barrier. No robes, no insignia, authority worn like a habit rather than a costume. Rowan stood at the center line. Allura, Sivan, Kai, and Leth stood behind him, not as witnesses, as presents. The chair began without preamble. "Marshal Hale," the lead examiner said, "you exceeded your mandate." Rowan replied, "I exercised it. You interfered with a lawful transfer. I documented an unlawful one." A pause, fingers moved across glass. "You placed yourself between system actors and assets." Rowan didn't flinch. They're people. The word landed, simple, irreversible. The examiner leaned back. Your report suggests systemic misuse of emergency authorization marks. It demonstrates it, Rowan said. Across 6 routes, 3 jurisdictions, and 2 oversight failures. All timestamped, all logged, screens activated around the chamber. Data bloomed into the air, routes, seals, authorizations repurposed and laundered until no one had to feel responsible. A murmur moved through the officials. You're asking us, the examiner said carefully, to acknowledge a pattern we have historically treated as anomaly. Yes, Rowan replied, because anomaly is what people call harm they don't want to fix. Silence followed, long enough to matter. Then the examiner turned, not to Rowan but to Allura. You, she said, step forward. Allura did, calm, unbowed. You recognize the mark used in these transfers? Yes. What did it mean to you? Allura didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. It meant someone would come, she said. It meant survival. It meant that if I held on, the system would hold too. The examiner's gaze flicked to the scar on her clavicle, to the faded geometry beneath it. And now? Now it means someone decided we were worth more as inventory. The chamber stayed quiet. The examiner exhaled slowly. Marshal Hale, she said, if we proceed as you recommend, this will not end quietly. Rowan met her eyes. It shouldn't. Another pause. Then the examiner nodded once. Proceed. The word carried, audits triggered, routes frozen, emergency marks reinstated under protected status. Independent oversight invoked not as a favor but as a correction. Names moved. Systems shifted. Not instantly, but permanently. Outside, the city went on. People worked. Vendors sold food. Turbines turned. The world did not stop for justice, but it adjusted. Later, on the promenade where the cliff dropped away into open air, Rowan stood with Allura beside him. The wind was cool, clean. They didn't punish you, Kai said, incredulous. They reassigned him, Sivan corrected. Higher visibility, less cover. Allura smiled faintly. Exactly where you wanted to be. Rowan didn't deny it. What happens now? Leth asked. Rowan looked out over the city, then back at them. Now, he said, you live where you choose, you move how you want, and if anyone tries to make you small again, they won't, Allura said. He met her gaze. No, he agreed, they won't. That evening, back at the apartment, the salt lamp glowed warm against the stone. Food cooked. Laughter surfaced, tentative at first, then real, not relief, release. Later still, Rowan stepped onto the balcony. Allura joined him, fitting there easily like a truth that no longer needed defending. You didn't save us, she said again. No, Rowan replied. We stood. She took his hand, held it, not gratitude, agreement. Below them, the ocean engines kept their steady rhythm. Above, the city lights held. And somewhere deep in the system, a symbol once twisted back into its proper shape, no longer a brand, no longer a lie, meant what it had always meant. If you hold on, someone will come. This time they stayed.